like I talk a whole lot about audiobooks, so here's a video where we'll talk a little bit about them. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite audiobooks that I have read, as well as narrators that I really enjoy for those particular audiobooks. I wanted to do this because I keep saying I'm still fairly new to audio. It's been kind of a while now, but it's still a relatively newer thing. I never had really done audio prior to the last year-ish is when I really started trying it out. I suppose it was around the time we started the Wheel of Time, so maybe end of 2021 probably is around the time I might have started, and then beginning of 2022. 2022 I started doing more and more. And it's become more of a normal thing where I do more. And so there are a lot of the really popular narrators that I still have not actually experienced. But I've found some that I've really enjoyed, and I've definitely realized there is a wide range. So I kind of wanted to talk about some of those with that. So since I've already mentioned Wheel of Time, I suppose we'll talk about it, and I'll give that an honorable mention at least to Michael Kramer and Kate Reading. I know that might be a little controversial because not everybody is a big fan of them, and I've heard more Michael Kramer than Kate Reading because he also did the Dandelion Dynasty, which I liked him as a narrator. I listened to Era 2 Mistborn with him that I did not like him as a narrator. For Wheel of Time, though, maybe it's just because I've listened to so many hours of him and Kate Reading talking, and it just kind of was some of the first audio I ever did. I like the way they do it. I think they do a good job. And I know some people like one, hate the other. Some people hate both, but I figure they at least get an honorable mention because I enjoy them, and I think they do a good job, at least for Wheel of Time. I don't know how much of the rest of their stuff I listen. I don't think they're narrators I would necessarily seek out, but I think they do a good job. And for Wheel of Time, it would be weird to hear anybody else narrating it, especially at this point now that I'm most of the way through the series doing an audio reread. So that's kind of where we're at with that one. Next up, I want to mention Lloyd James, which was a more recent one, who narrated The Curse of Chalion by Lois McMaster Pugil. I did hybrid this one with audio and physical, so I didn't do the, and actually ebook. This was I did all three formats, so all my reading time went to it. So I didn't listen to the whole thing on audio, but the narrator here, Lloyd James, did a really, really good job with just how he did it. It was one of those times where I feel like he was the perfect narrator for this story. I'd be really curious to see his other stuff. But for a setting where we're dealing with a lot of nobles and politics between nobility and just kind of the way that they talk, I felt like he fit really, really well. Kind of a dry narrator in a way that worked really, really well for this story. So I haven't tried anything else. I'm hoping that he does more of The World of Five Gods and Bugil's books because I plan to continue. And if it's also him, I might try to hybrid some of those too because I have several in physical format. I don't have other formats though, but I've started trying to do a little bit more of that, which is another way why, talking about audio, I'm doing it a little bit more. Sometimes I'm hybrid reading where I will physically read and then do audio. Times I can't physically read and go from there, but one that I did quite enjoy. Now the next one I'm going to talk about, I feel like I have to mention because I absolutely loved the audio performance, even though the book was not quite for me, but it would be The Name of All Things. So this has three narrators, which is Saskia Marleveld, which I'm probably mispronouncing, Dan Bittner, and Lauren Fortgang. I'm not sure which one is the narrator, because that's my favorite. So it's either Saskia or Lauren, who does the actual main narration, who is my favorite from here, but all three do a really fantastic job. Honestly, the only reason I made it about halfway through that book before DNFing because I just wasn't really feeling it. I'd been really mixed on the first one. I was hoping the second one would definitively tell me if I wanted to read or not. I'm still not entirely sure, but if you're planning on trying Course of Dragons and you like audio, I cannot recommend the audio enough. I feel like it would have made me enjoy the first one even more because just really, really great performance, and I'm really excited to hear more from some of these authors just because they made a great impression even though I wasn't a huge fan of the book. And so if I do continue that series, it definitely will be audio. That's why I don't have a physical copy anymore because I really liked the audio, and the series itself just seems like it might not be for me. So we'll see on that one though. Next up, I want to mention, and this is another one where I've only heard this narrator do one series, and they seem perfect for that series, but I'd be really curious to find out more about them. But I've got to mention Sean Barrett, who does the Draenei series, and he is just perfect. He's, at least at the time of recording these, and he's apparently done a ton of audio, so I'll probably come across him again. But with these, he is an older guy, and a lot of the characters in David Gemmell's Draenei saga are older, and so it fits really, really well. The way he does action sequences, I think, also work perfectly, and he's just was also one of the earlier people I tried, because I was trying out some of those audiobooks. And I loved the audiobook so much that I stopped reading these physically, and I only do the audio just because, I'm not a big fan of reading mass market paperbacks, but I love the way he does it, the way he does the characters. He's not the most, a lot of authors today will do more like distinct character voices, and he does that to an extent. Like, he'll do certain characters, especially like the gruff ones, will sound very different, and then just kind of his normal voice with some small changes. So he's not huge into doing every character sounding different, but once again, just fits so well with the content in this type of story, and I'd be really, really curious to see more of what he's done as well. So he's one I definitely would keep an eye out for as well. And if you're looking into trying Draenei, once again, the audio is really, really good. None of them are super long, so you can get through pretty quickly as well, whether you're reading physical or audio, but really, really good audio. Just fits the series very, very well. Another more fairly recent one, it's been a little bit longer, but a book where I've only had this one book that I did audio on for this narrator, but that is going to be Steve West for Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman. And he, once again, this was the absolute perfect narrator for this type of story. His voice is very clear. He pronounces there's French words used kind of throughout, pronounces all of that really, really well. And just his narration just fit really well. I did this one, I'm pretty sure it was free on Audible, included with the subscription anyway, and I still don't have a physical copy of Between Two Fires, but I really enjoyed the book. It's something I even said in my review. I think it's the type of book I typically don't like to do audio for, because certain books, and I'm still, despite me embracing audio a lot more, I still prefer overall physical media, and certain books it's just this is the kind of book I just like to sit and read slowly because of the way it's written and just go. But he did such a phenomenal job that while I still want a physical copy of the book, I was enjoying the heck out of it as well. There's another narrator I'll mention too who just writes the kind of books that I normally would much prefer to physically read, but does such a great job narrating for the audiobooks as well. So we'll talk about that. But yeah, I really, really love the job Steve West did. He's also one I think has done quite a few, so I'll be checking out more of him as well. But Between Two Fires, especially if you have an Audible subscription, I believe you can listen to it for free, and it's really well written for that book, especially, which takes place during the time of I think the Black Death, and just between wars and darkness and all of it, just so well written. Next up, we have one of my new favorites, which is going to be Andrew D. Meredith, who's both the author and the narrator for the Collation Saga as well as Thrice. I have Deathless Beast here, the first book in Collation Saga here. This is another one where these books, this is what I was talking about, these books are the kind, normally I like to just read this because it's the perfect, just sit back and relax and read this book that it's so wonderful to read this kind of book physically. I've ended up doing hybrid for most of his books, though, because his narration is just really fantastic. His voice fits super well. Also, obviously, he wrote the book, so he knows how to pronounce everything, but he also has a remarkable ability to make each and every character, whether it's a main character or a random character we're meeting for a couple of pages, sound unique, and just does such a great job with those different character voices, emotions, interactions, and just it's a delight to listen to and to read physically. So another one where I'd recommend the author in general as well, having read his books out so far and very eagerly awaiting to read more of them coming up soon. But it's definitely one too as well where I don't know if I can pick audio or physical because they're both just excellent. So I think you're good either option that you might choose for that one. Next up, then, we have one of my other favorite narrators who I've actually listened to a fair amount of different stuff now at this point, which would be Ray Porter, who I first heard on Project Hail Mary, and this is probably my favorite audiobook of all time, Project Hail Mary. Really, really good story. It's one I cannot imagine listening or actually physically reading. I have the copy, but everyone's like, no, do audio. And I'm like, okay. I don't know that I'll ever read this book. I'm still keeping it, but I don't know that I'll ever physically read it because the audio is just so perfect. And it's one of those things where there are a lot of elements in there as well, just small things, but that make a big difference and you wouldn't get the same thing if you weren't doing audio. So a really, really well-crafted audiobook. And Ray Porter was the first person that I'm like, oh, I really, really need to check out more of his stuff. I ended up reading the Bobaverse books just because he narrated them. What's getting enjoyable? Ones I feel like I reading the books physically, I wonder if I would have liked them as much if he wasn't doing it. But the way he narrates, especially for sci-fi series, is just excellent. I'm actually currently doing the Rune Lords saga as well, which he narrates, which he does a completely different cadence and style of narration for, being that it's a high fantasy and not a sci-fi type novel. So already shows that he has a ton of range there with how he does different things, and it's just, I think I prefer sci-fi Ray Porter over fantasy Ray Porter, but he does a fantastic job either side you want to go on. So it's a really, really, really great narrator. Another one too, where if I see he's narrated something, it's a big win. That was part of too with starting the Rune Lords. I had several of the books, and it's a series I wanted to read. Seeing that also I can get those audiobooks included on Audible with subscription for no extra cost, and the fact that it's Ray Porter, I was super, super sold for those reasons. So yeah, definitely Ray Porter is a great one as well. And finally, one we have to mention, joining the club of books I could not imagine consuming any other way, would most certainly have to be Jeff Hayes, who does the narration for Dungeon Crawler Carl. And these are some of just the most entertaining audiobooks I've had. That I've gone through, probably the most entertaining just in general. It's not even my kind of story normally because it is a lit RPG. I don't normally like those, but I was just sucked into this one because the story is actually really, really good too. The story and the characters and the way you start to see the tone shifting as you get in there is handled really, really well. So that is in general great. But the narration, which is done through Sound Booth Theater, and I have not tried any other Sound Booth Theater things besides this book. I've done the first 5 books on audio though, so I had a fair amount of the narrator. I definitely want to check out more of their stuff, but very specifically Jeff Hayes as well, because he just does a great job with the different voices. It's, once again, I can't imagine reading these books because the audio is just like the way to consume it for me. And so whenever you can do that, considering I'm a person who prefers physical, that's pretty successful. So these are just so much fun. I've talked about them before too. I think they're worth giving a shot. It's humorous and fun while also getting incredibly dark at times and having the serious moments put in. It does, go through some dungeon mechanics and stuff like that as well, which once again, I think if you were reading it physically, I think some of that might be a little bit boring, but doing the audio makes it a lot better for those slow parts. And then for the big parts, just as fantastic. The voices, the sound effects, the things that are all in there for these, they're a little bit more than the standard audiobook for sure. Just really, really fantastic. And also some of just the favorite audio that I've done. And it's really, really great listens for those. I keep wanting to say reads, but listens, because I've only done the audio, and I most certainly will be continuing to just do the audio because that is the way to consume those, I think, as well. So those are some of my favorite audiobooks / narrators. I'd be definitely curious to hear yours. I know there's a lot, like I said, if you're looking for oh my gosh, this person, that person. Like I said, I haven't done a ton of audio, so there are a lot of well-known, popular narrators that I've heard of and I'm kind of familiar with, but that I just have not had the pleasure of listening to their books yet, so definitely will be more. So let me know if you've listened to any of these as well, and what your thoughts are on them, as well as other narrators that I did not mention. Always curious to see that as well. These really are just a group of audiobooks and audiobook narrators that have made me a lot more willing to embrace audio as a way to do some reading. It's just not something I'd ever really done, and so it's become kind of a more normal part of my reading in general. So between this started with Kindle after BookTube. I'd never had a Kindle. I didn't really want one. I got more used to that. Now I use my Kindle regularly and audio regularly, as well as still, of course, physical reading as well. So it's always nice to kind of broaden that and go from there. That is it for this one, though. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoy it. Check the link in the description, as always, for the Wizardly Duo Discord if you want to chat books, whether any of these books, other books, or really anything at all. It is a lot of fun, and we'd love to have you. And, of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.